Right, here we are. Good morning, world. I hope everybody's doing super awesome today. More happy than mad or sad today, I hope. There's lots to be mad about. There's no shortage of shit to be mad about today, these days, but as long as we concentrate on what we love to do and the good, we should be all right, right? Hopefully. Now, what did I do? Yesterday, I promised that we would hear from the late, great Bobbie Short today. She's physically passed on, but she's still here, right? And she deserves to have one of the louder voices, I believe, when it comes to this topic. So she will continue to be heard, starting off this morning with something from her, all right? Now, where should I start? One report came from a driver hauling fuel while working for a major oil company. In 1996, the driver wrote me about two major highway sightings he personally had. Both occurred up the Interstate 5 corridor in the northbound lanes through California's beautiful Mount Shasta County. There is very little physical detail in his report except its height, which would have placed it in the 9 to 10 foot category. The approximate height of a tractor-trailer's cab. The behavior, however, was something else. The truck driver said this individual strolled out onto the freeway in the midst of tractor-trailers, recreational vehicles, and other general traffic. Brakes squealed, cars fishtailed, and yet the Sasquatch apparently just walked unconcerned amidst the vehicles. We cannot say categorically that all Sasquatch have a high degree of street smarts. Bears aren't that irresponsible. Rare are the reports of bears mindlessly sauntering out onto a busy, highly trafficked thoroughfare. Yet in my data, the most reported cases tend to be sightings from the road. In any case, the informant said the creature walked casually onto the northbound side of traffic, having come out of the pine trees that line the forested freeway in that part of the country. Excuse me. The highway is split in that vicinity into separate lanes. The northbound and southbound traffic is divided by a wide median, thick with pine trees, all sides heavily forested. The Sasquatch did not stop and look. He was apparently not deterred by the approach of high-beam headlights, horns, and screeching brakes. The Sasquatch strolled smoothly across the trucker's lane, crossing the freeway in just a few steps that he said, quote, were major steps. It was not leaping, but strolling along looking straight forward. The trucker stated he pulled on the air horn, but got no reaction from the strange creature. This sort of behavior is commonly reported, not only in the Lakehead Lakeshore region of California, but all over North America. The gas hauler in the previous account applied brakes. So did the witness in this next narrative. His reaction was animated and expressive. The story has its origins in West Texas, where the African-American trucker became emotionally overwrought during the telling of his ordeal. Seeing the large, hairy primitive amble across the road directly in front of him, he screamed into the telephone, "Whoa, sweet Jesus! What do we have here? Glory, hallelujah! Help me, Jesus! What is this thing I see?" Wildly emotional, the trucker said he was concerned whether or not he would be able to stand on his brakes hard enough to stop the fully loaded 18-wheeler. This was just 3 miles eastbound out of Butterfield, Hudspeth County, Texas, on Highway 62. The informant, Amos Washington, said he had to gear down to allow the loping barefoot booger to cross the road, exclaiming that it was hairy and naked. Mr. Washington, decidedly upset in retelling of his experience, remarked that the night was pitch black outside. He indicated the apparition had better eyesight than he did to negotiate the terrain like it did. I could never decide which was more interesting, the informant or his telling of the event. Wow. A few of the Roadrunner sightings, however, parlay into additional behaviors like peering into the vehicle, reaching into vehicles, or running along the side of a vehicle, and sometimes facial gestures like smiling or showing teeth. And, interestingly, in one report, the show of emotion and the acknowledgement of road courtesies. Many are chase scenes and Bigfoot racing alongside cars. Yeah, we've heard a lot of that. The biggest impact story I heard of that flavor was my ex-girlfriend. Remember that one? Stooped over, face in the window. Stephen M. had an unusual road encounter in Jasper County, Missouri. The witness claimed that he saw a large, hairy creature from head to toe, completely covered in long, spindly hair, ambled down the middle of a 2-lane highway that led to his former home in Joplin, Missouri. The creature stood in front of the man's car, perfectly still in the headlights for several minutes. Stephen flashed his headlights and tooted the horn with no reaction from the creature. He exclaimed it was almost as if the Sasquatch was a deaf mute. There are several instances in the data where the hairy man is described acting as if it was mute or deaf and dumb. The report said, suddenly the monster broke into a sprint, headed right at the witness's car. The witness stepped on the accelerator and managed to swerve to avoid hitting the beast. He mentioned the car suffered minor front-end damage when he swerved the vehicle off the side of the road. He reported the incident to the local sheriff, who informed him there had been several other sightings that same night. In Missouri, the locals call the Sasquatch Momo. A retired federal employee, Hunter Woodsman, shared this encounter in 2011 with Stan Hatala. The statement was taken from 2 ladies who were traveling to work into Lincoln, Montana, because they had to open and get lambkins. They had to open and get Lambkin's restaurant ready for the morning breakfast crowd. That's Lambkins restaurant. Ready for the morning breakfast crowd. They're driving their car down the pavement northeast of Lincoln, say 20 miles, when a large hairy biped came across in front of the path of the vehicle from the creek below the roadbed on their right and went up an embankment into the Hagen Creek drainage. I took it that the car was brought to a stop to avoid hitting the creature. The creature was less than 5 feet in front of the car and in full view through the windshield. It looked in their direction before climbing up the roadside incline. They did not wish to comment, but I finally got one of them to talk to me about the encounter afterward. I am convinced there are many stories that remain untold. There are many hot spots, and these stories, when put together, often broaden the geographic areas, increasing the need for concentrated research efforts down the road. One such area is between Helena, Montana, and Lincoln Rogers Pass. Oops, hold on. Sorry. I'm leaning the book up against my laptop, which is sitting on a little box. In a separate incident, Stan spoke with a fellow over the phone that had a Bigfoot Roadrunner sighting. The man was traveling down I-80 in California between Sacramento and Reno, Nevada at 3 p.m. 3 p.m. When suddenly in front of him was a black Sasquatch crossing multiple lanes of the interstate freeway. Road reports generally lack detail, so surprised are the people who see them from inside a moving vehicle. It's uncommon to get much creature description from an excited informant. Rare are any behavior notations in road sightings. The next roadside sighting had a vivid description. The behavior shows lack of interest in the dangers inherent in all busy highways. It was described by Wayne A.M. of Camp Tom Howard, Tennessee, in October 2004. It was broad daylight. We could see clear as day that as we approached, this man was unusually tall and covered about his body with hair. Not a thick fur coat, but hair on parts of his body. The guy had no clothes on, had long, straggling hair that bounced off his wide shoulders, and he walked bizarrely. This guy was going the same way we were going, and finally he took a couple steps and got off the road. Then full stop, turned, looked at us as we drove on by. Creepy. Reminds me, I'm on a construction site in Whistler, British Columbia. The building crew, we're all buddies. We all worked in the same jobs for a long time. And we're sitting there bullshitting away, and it was so funny. 3 guys in one crew. You know, sometimes people got to look over or look through or question a lot of people before they come up with someone who knows something on this topic or seen these people, right? And there we are, this tiny little crew in Whistler, and 3 people. I'll never forget this one real good guy, English guy. And we were talking about it with a friend of mine on the crew who had seen these beings twice up near Darcy, British Columbia. And the other guy, we're all eating lunch. And the English goes, yeah, I've seen one of those things. Just casually, like he's getting in on the conversation about seeing a deer on the road. And I'm like, what? Where? And it was at Daisy Lake. If any of you are familiar with or want to Google it up, Daisy Lake, it's all on the border of Garibaldi Park, which you could probably write a full book on sightings just from that area. And he said he was driving down the highway to Squamish about 9 or 10 at night, pitch black. And he said as he's coming on, there's one bend there. There's a little bit of a rest stop on the right. I'm sure a lot of people listening who are from the area know where I'm talking about. There's that one first. You go past the falls, that park, go over that highway bridge, and you come down, winds around to the right. Now you're beside the lake, downhill on your left, and there's that little pullout on the right. It's just past that on an outside bend. And he said he could see the headlights coming from around the corner. And he saw on the bend this great big huge thing on 2 feet stepped out and then stepped back in. Whoops. Like went to cross the highway heading towards the lake and then went, oh, no. I drove by, just disappeared back in the darkness. You know, how do you know when they don't want to be seen, right? When they react like that, it tells you flat out. But it sure is weird how some of these people don't give a flying shit, or run beside a car, or shake a car. And then other times, nope, I'm not going to be seen at all, no matter what. Creepy, right? There's another friend of mine I told everybody about this a long time ago. I was just looking on the map. I don't know why. I was looking on the map just last evening. I pulled up my maps on my phone and I Googled up Logger Lake, just south of Whistler. And a friend of mine, contractor, and another guy, they were in their tubes. You know, fishing tubes, the little inner tube with a seat in the middle, and you put on your waders and your flippers, and you drop yourself in the middle of it, and you sit there, and you fish, fly fish. And I guess they're younger, and Friday night, and they decided to go trout fishing on that lake. Full moon night, moon comes up, it's still light out, they're drinking, having fun. And they were in the shadow part of the lake. So that probably would have been the east end of the lake, in the shadow from the moon. And they paddled out into the light, the moonlight. And he said, and this guy doesn't believe in these beings at all, he laughs at it, but he said, well, that one night, he's from New Zealand originally, and he said that they paddled out there, and as soon as they broke the light from the shadow on the lake, he said something took off running on the side of the bank. It sounded like a horse, fast as a horse, he said, and huge, and snapping off those stunted spruce trees like nothing, smashing through them, but then he could tell it was on 2 feet. I'll never forget he told me that. I had a look. And man, there's a big housing development like within hundreds of yards of that lake currently. Back then there's a landfill that used to be right there when that would have went down, and a couple other commercial industrial style buildings were there. But now there's apartments and condos stuffed in there. Another time too, there was another report I read of some people going up the gondola on Whistler Mountain, and they said this large hairy thing stood right out of the timber, looked up at them, and then slipped back into the timber, disappeared. There you go. I don't know why I thought of that, but I just did. You know, another thing about these people being angry, I don't know why, but this one other documented incident that always kind of creeped me out because it's so close to home, and it was the turnoff around, I think it's around Massachi Lake, which is beside Cowichan Lake, and I believe it was the turnoff to go west and drop down through to Port Renfrew, which that road, when you follow it, when it comes out to the San Juan Valley, is very close to where my grandfather had his face-to-face. And this guy, I think he had his daughter with him, in the dark, trying to get to Port Renfrew in time to go fishing in the morning first light. And I think he stopped to go pee in the side of the road right there. And all of a sudden, he said, the truck began to violently shake, and he thought he was in a landslide, and had his kids in the truck, dove in the truck, pinned it, and then realized he was on flat ground. There's not even a hill near him. And then he saw that the tongue, the hitch on his boat trailer was so bent from that violent shaking that he couldn't get the trailer off of his tow hitch on his pickup. So something picked up the ass end of the boat and trailer and shook the living shit out of it and bent the trailer while he was standing there in the pitch black having a pee. Tell me that wouldn't scare the shit out of anybody, right? That'd be kind of shitty. A shitty experience to have. I'm just waking up right now. Sometimes I babble. A face like an old warrior. The encounter was documented by Octavio Ramos of the Albuquerque Examiner. The roadside encounter took place on March 7th, 2011 in Thuro, New Mexico. According to the witness, he was traveling home from work. From Gallup, it's just Gallup. You know how I suck at the Hispanic names. Gallup, it doesn't say Gallup, it says Gallup, to Blue Water in a storm when he noticed a figure moving by the road. At first, the witness believed the form to be that of an unusually tall person. Excuse me. But as he got closer, he saw that the creature looked, by its hair, to be more ape-like than human. He estimated the size of it at 7 feet tall and in excess of 400 pounds. The creature was covered with long strands of brown hair over the body, with shorter grayish hair on its head. It had dark eyes, a pronounced brow, and a face like an old warrior, both stern and angry in expression. The witness was frightened and elected not to stop because of the mixture of snow and ice on the road and the size of the creature, which made its way toward his truck. The witness said that the creature did come very close to his vehicle. Ugh. It is interesting that the informant described the Sasquatch as ape-like, then contradicted himself by saying, quote, "It had the face of an old warrior," end quote, which would be human-like, not ape-like. In many cases, I think the body hair is the confusion. The Ramos case is one of many that lists the behavior of Sasquatch freely moving about in freezing conditions. It is another case where the Sasquatch has been observed walking in snow and ice, barefooted, apparently for long periods of time, according to various reports and snow photographs. Are they oblivious to the pain you and I would normally feel walking barefoot in icy conditions? Or are their feet so heavily calloused they are able to withstand freezing temperatures? Right? That always kind of freaks me out in a way, sort of, when you see it could be in the minus signs, minus temperatures, minus 10, minus 20, whatever, and there's ducks swimming around. You know, or deer walking around in this shit. And when you've skinned out any game animal yourself and you see that there's absolutely no fat there, there's nothing there. Why is it not freezing rock solid? Do you know what I mean? Kind of odd. I'm sure there's an explanation for it, but I'm just not familiar with it because, as you know, in the tail end of school, I wasn't really paying too much attention. I knew I had to just get the hell out of there as soon as I could. Sure is odd, though, how many animals out there don't freeze and aren't covered in fat. I get it with seals and whales. But ungulates? Minus 50? Huh? And even birds? What's going on? Your eyeballs should be frozen in your head at minus 50, just sitting on a branch 24/7. Excuse me. Excess body heat question mark. I read a science article that may shed some light on the Sasquatch's ability to withstand extreme cold temperatures. The article suggested that the DNA of the Neanderthal showed markers indicating their body produced excess heat, perhaps Mother Nature's way of warming them in winter. Might this be the case with the Sasquatch? Much has been speculated that perhaps the Sasquatch has this same marker and may account for the ability to walk in snow, teach their children to walk early in snow and survive winters in such places as the Alaska, Northwest Territories, and the Arctic reaches of the Yukon and Nunavak, Quebec. We have available in research many photographs of adult footprints in snow, and alongside those tracks we see tiny 5 to 6 inch tracks identical to the adult track. The Sasquatch cannot be an ape. North America has no fossil record of great apes. Apes are quadrupeds. The Sasquatch is biped. For me, there was never any logic in thinking them upright walking apes, despite reports that originated from the cryptozoologists that the southern states had a variety of subspecies that were feral ape Sasquatch types. At the same time, I discovered that all states have strict wildlife certification requirements for any ape held on private or public lands. That includes Florida, where apes are illegal to keep without certificates of state approval, adequate insurance, and strictly regulated facilities and fencing. Steep fines are strictly enforced. Housing an ape is discouraged, especially males, because there is a potential for sudden aggressiveness. Fatalities have occurred. State laws required males be castrated and females the same, since an escaped ape wouldn't be able to reproduce. It more or less rules out a group of feral apes being misidentified as a towering Sasquatch. The news more or less ruled out the Mayaca, Florida creature, as an ape, relegating it to that of a costumed individual. a more sensible conclusion. I was personally questioned attentively by most agencies when I broached this subject and was admonished that there were no pockets of feral apes in the Carolinas, Georgia, Florida, or Alabama. Florida's wildlife representative also reminded me that a feral ape population would require appropriate vegetation. Palmettos and southern pine trees are not forage for apes. All citrus farms are closely regulated, and the state would know if Florida orange and grapefruit growers were being hassled by any population of feral apes. Otherwise, Florida has no wild fruit trees, orchards available for feral ape footage. The basic dietary requirement for feral ape populations does not exist in Florida or any other southern state. Yeah, no doubt. It's funny how far we've come. Like, I wonder what Bobbie thinks right now about how far we've come with everybody coming forward, what they've seen firsthand, felt, heard, had sent to them via telepathy. Do you know what I mean? How many people have observed these beings vanishing behind a tiny tree, into a tree, coming up from the ground, all sorts of weird shit, right? I wonder what Bob would think about that right now, all those people bravely coming forward with the details that a lot of people didn't want to hear. And still don't want to hear, right? I wonder. Another incident in the snow. This next case came to me from Quay County, New Mexico. Quote, my grandfather, Horace, was an engineer for the Rock Island Railroad in the 1900s. In his diary, there is an entry that spoke to something unusual. It's in a safety deposit box. My sister has the keys, but I'll try to recall the incident as I think you'll find it interesting. Horace wrote extensively about a winter in 1950. January, I think it was. He guided the freight train north towards Tucumcari, New Mexico, in a dastardly snowstorm. Short of the city, he saw through heavy falling snow what he thought at first were Apache Indians wrapped in dark blankets huddled together walking toward the city. Upon closer inspection, there were 6 or 7 upright, walking, hair-covered beings walking along the railroad tracks. He thought them aliens because 3 years before this incident, there was the big stink in Roswell about an alien flying saucer crash. And you know that story. As the locomotive drew past the bunch, he got a good look and described them as nothing he had ever seen before. They wore no foot covering or clothes. The blankets were instead thick hair on them, and all of them had braided their hair down their backs. Wait a minute, what? They wore no foot covering or clothes. The blankets were instead thick hair on them, and all of them had braided hair down their backs, and each walked with arms embraced across the chest against the blowing snow, heads down into the storm. The entry continued with my grandfather saying he was sound of mind and not drunk. I work for the Southern Pacific Railroad and would appreciate anonymity. Anonymity. Please. If you fancy the Sasquatch as an ape, a point to consider would be that apes are not found in climates where it snows. They live in tropical climates where fruit and edible green vegetable is in abundance year-round. Some argue there are macaque snow monkeys in Japan that do live in snowy conditions, but they spend the winter sitting in hot springs, and they are not great apes. Hold on a second. We're talking lesser monkeys in the case of Sasquatch. I don't think I'm painting here with too broad a brush, but if some of these reports are valid and true, we will at some point have to consider the Sasquatch has become a highly successful species. They appear efficient, able to establish themselves and adapt within their environment, and to the encroachment of civilized man and modern machinery. The Sasquatch is like man, yet unlike him, in that its adaptations are entirely of bodily strength and endurance. The Sasquatch's size and physical strength prove sufficient for its protection and for obtaining food without reliance on others. With few exceptions, the Sasquatch appears to be entirely a self-sufficient machine that works in concert with its environment to remain covert, all the while functioning as a family unit similar to us but removed from any social interaction. Beyond finding random tracks for the Sasquatch, research doesn't have much in the way of known behaviors, with positive evidence to support the claims. Research essentially is at the mercy of the witness, of witness interpretations, and anyone will tell you witness interpretations are often skewed and unreliable. Even my own memories become dim and confused at times. The flawed perceptions of an informant are often exaggerated by the shock that accompanies the visuals involving the strange sight of a Sasquatch and its overwhelming size. I've painstakingly measured all angles of witness interpretation and decided that without anecdotal evidence, research basically has nothing to consider, no clues with which to move forward deciphering how they maintain life. DNA may tell us the genetic origins of the Sasquatch, but it will never tell us their rules for living, or if they have a moral code. Sometimes it seems like what's theirs is theirs, and what's ours is also theirs. DNA won't tell us anything about their culture, their social structure, or how they came to be here. DNA may tell us if they are physically equipped to speak, but it won't tell us if they have been taught a language, or what it is if they have. Do they simply mimic what they overhear? Still, if only a small percentage of what witnesses tell us is accurate, that much might be considered. The only real way to get better accuracy in sighting reports is to polygraph each informant. And that is not only unreliable but expensive, time-consuming, and not very practical. Not only are reports often faulty, but most of the participants in research are keyboard investigators and wholly unprepared to question informants without leading questions. By that, one of the essentials field investigators overlook is the mental health of an informant. Case in point. I work with a female informant by email for 5.5 months on a daily basis, unsure what she told me was actually happening because there was never any proof, no evidence, tracks, or photos. She detailed a family of Sasquatches who often came to her backyard looking for handouts. My exchanges with her moved from email to phone conversations that lasted for hours at a time, and often late into the night. So intriguing were her associations with the Sasquatches on her property, I became enthralled in her weekly updates. Frustrations grew out of the lack of clear tracks and photographs or other evidence. Still, she persisted. 5 months turned into a year, and the communication with her continued until I finally relented to visit her over a weekend. Her home was an 11-hour drive one way, but I went anyway. She was warm, extremely intelligent, and taught economics at one of California's prestigious universities. There was no reason not to believe what the woman was telling me. I arrived on Friday. We talked until 2 in the morning over a myriad of things. She was genuinely likable and interesting. Her Sasquatch descriptions were accurate, detailed, and fascinating. She declared photos were not possible, even hidden from the inside of the house or secreted in her clothing. I could never understand that logic. Photos do not threaten, endanger, or give away. Hold on a minute. She declared photos were not possible, even hidden from inside the house or secreted in her clothing. I could never understand that logic. Photos do not threaten, endanger, or give away her secret location. Nevertheless, I was prepared with an unseen camera. Oh. Well, I think we all know how that's going to go, right? At this stage of the game. If you go prepared with an unseen camera, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Excuse me. Recently widowed, she lived alone on property that backed up to a national forest with all the ingredients for long-term interaction with the Sasquatch family. And I admit, I was her captive audience. We spent all day Saturday in the field, and I actually did find tracks deep in the bush that circled a stagnant pond. It was active with dragonflies, tadpoles, and gnats, but little else. With the heat, the stench was overwhelming, but it came out of the pond itself and was not the odor of some unseen Sasquatch. Anybody been around a pond where the, quote, stench was overwhelming, end quote? I've been around a lot of ponds, stagnant ponds. I've never felt to describe a pond like that ever in my life. Sorry. It was at this point that I thoughtfully considered her account may have merit. There were 6 15-inch tracks in all, each with a width of 6.5 inches. All were clearly 5-toed, the right foot with a slight arc, the left foot flat-footed. Back at our beautiful hillside home and exhausted from the miles we'd walked, we sat on our back deck watching into the tree line until well after 3 in the morning. Nothing happened, and I turned in for the night. Sunday morning dawned a gorgeous day. She went to great trouble to fix a breakfast of German sausage and Ebelskivers. Ebelskivers, dusted with powdered sugar and coffee. Staying at her house was comparable to a weekend stay at a 5-star hotel resort. She was a marvelous hostess and great company. I genuinely liked her. She was, to anyone's mind, a credible informant. We ate on the back deck, and she pointed out where a big male would often come out of the woods and stand motionless staring at her, watching. I figured, with 15-inch tracks, the Sasquatch most likely wouldn't be as big as she demonstrated with her hands. Probably a shorter female or older juvenile. Morning came and I went, and I had to consider an 11-hour drive home. My restlessness was apparent. Suddenly my informant shouted and pointed to a giant blue spruce not 60 feet from her dining room deck, veranda. Thinking she must mean behind the spruce, I headed out into the yard in the direction she pointed. But I found nothing and returned back to the porch, a bit put off and suspicious. As I approached the steps, she excitedly pointed in the other direction and announced excitedly, "Here they come now. They're curious about you. They want to meet you, I think." Again, turning in that direction, all I saw was the dog emerging from its doghouse, yawning and stretching and then coming our way. Still, I scanned the area, desperately trying to see what she saw, but nothing was there. I mean, absolutely nothing was there. And believe me, I looked. Meanwhile, my brain was beginning to re-examine the situation. I found myself there with this marvelously intelligent woman whose company I thoroughly enjoyed. But I said nothing to her as she carried on with her excitement. "You don't seem very interested," she said earnestly. "I'm very interested, but I can't see what you are seeing," I replied in a rather thoughtless tone, and I heard a faint, "Oh dear," as she excused herself to run into the house. The woman emerged with a pharmacy prescription bottle. She fumbled to take a pill with her coffee. Sometimes discretion really is the better part of valor, but holding myself in check that day required some doing. I grew anxious to hit the highway home and made inroads to that end. Then, strangely, and as if on cue, her son dropped in for his weekly visit with his widowed mother. In the course of the exchange, I learned his mother was diagnosed schizophrenic with imaginings and sporadic delusions far beyond my comprehension and my training. Without her medication, which I was told she often forgot, she imagined many unusual things, to include Bigfoot sightings, canvassing her backyard, and visitors from space. How did I miss the signs? What about the tracks by the pond? A full year conversing with the informant convinced me of her high intellect and seeming stability. Unfortunately, she had mental health issues, which made for a very long 11-hour drive back home. It doesn't help that she's lonely and seemed to need mental stimulation that our long conversations brought her. We remain in contact today. Her sightings are fewer when she remembers her medication. Even though there were well-defined Sasquatch tracks several miles south of her residence around a stagnant pond, it's hard to know what the reality of the situation ever was or was not. Did the maker of the pond tracks ever actually come into her yard and speak with her? I don't know. Pride aside, as field investigators, we fail miserably at interpreting the merits of a case by telephone interview/conversations alone. It doesn't matter who you are or how long you've been examining evidence in this field. The truth cannot be reasoned by a telephone call, however long the call may be. That's unfortunate, but you know what? From what we know now, I don't know, man. I can't. I myself, from what we know from all of the people here, I couldn't just write off that woman's experiences. The woman she went and saw, right? Because I have firsthand experience of somebody hearing what I'm not hearing, and I should be hearing, but I'm not hearing nothing. The first time that happened was with my friend who has a degree in psychology, and he could hear what he said sounded like a sledgehammer beating the living shit out of a tree, the sound coming from the direction where I was and was headed to, in the dead silence of the first half hour of seeing light hunting. So I'm being stealthy, dead quiet, and I didn't hear nothing. Didn't hear nothing. And then Sarah also heard something odd this last hunt we just went on. She said, "Can't you hear that? You can't hear that?" I'm like, "I'm not hearing nothing. What are you talking about?" Who knows, right? We did have a couple knocks on tree sounds I did hear with her, though, this last trip. I just don't mention everything that I do here in the woods. It's like not like I'm not avidly looking for it, but I'm trying to remember this. We went to so many places, but I remembered hearing 3 distinct knocks on wood. She heard it, and I'm like, it might have been a woodpecker, whatever. And then I said under my breath, "Just don't scare us. Don't scare Sarah." You know? And then when we left, we had to hike quite the hike to get to the quad. And then those 3 exact same sounds came from the timber beyond the quad again. So we do hear the same things, but at times I don't hear anything and she's hearing something. And then other time when my buddy heard the tree getting blasted, I didn't hear nothing. And there's another case I believe Dr. John Bendernagel went to someone's house who was seeing multiple beings through his living room window years ago. I remember, did I read about it? Or did he tell me? I forget. It's quite a while ago. But I do remember that he went to the house and the guy was taking pictures, but there's nothing on the photographs. And I believe he did see the beings himself as well in this lot across from the house, but they couldn't get pictures of them, which weren't showing up. Nothing. Whatever, right? And then there's the fact that Bobbie went there with a secretive camera hidden. From what we know now, that's a guarantee nothing's going to happen. Right? Guaranteed. Allegedly, they say they know your intent before you even get there. I believe that is true. Myself. Excuse me. Another more localized interview in the hills of San Diego County, California, ended quickly when the man answered the door and openly confessed he was hoaxing, just to see if any of the Bigfoot people would take the bait. So you never know what you'll encounter. Overall, I think most testimonies are genuine, but who knows? Sometimes I think the genuineness of a report comes in tiny details the public isn't aware of, and I like hearing those from a witness. Small children are especially great with details. On-site interviews are costly, time-consuming, and long hours away from family. One longtime researcher said of his informant, "He's a really nice guy." Of course, being a nice guy doesn't give his testimony any particular merit. As it turned out, that particular report was fabricated. I don't know how many times I've heard researchers say the reports they took was credible, and they based their opinion on the credentials after the informant's name or some impressive affiliation elsewhere. That is a silly way to think. Even U.S. presidents point into the camera lens and lie straight-faced. I like Bill Clinton, but he's a bold-faced liar who preferred to save his ass than tell the truth about Monica Lewinsky. He's no George Washington, although cherry trees may not measure up to an affair in the Oval Office with an intern. Do not base the merits of a Bigfoot situation on a man's profession or the credentials listed after his name. Hoaxing comes from all manner of personalities. Some of our highly regarded name recognition nice guys have fabricated a story or two. Hang around long enough and you hear it all. 30 years has taught me the deception in this field among the visible, more vocal members would be scandalous, if all was told. Interviewing by telephone is convenient, but no way to evaluate the worth of a sighting. I spent a great deal of time with the woman in the cited example, but a greater lesson was learned. Not all interviews I've done end up like that one. It was a lesson I didn't expect, and a chance to think You wouldn't have either. Huh. Do I keep going? She goes on debating the credibility of people or not. What isn't present in this book are the thousands of email descriptions of how unhinged men are during an encounter or a perceived encounter. Very few reports neglect to describe in detail the fear felt by witnesses, perceived or imagined. To them, the fear is very real. It skews perceptions. Men have reported wetting their pants, becoming immobile, being frozen, transfixed, weak, sweating profusely, or actually passing out and believing they lost time. It wasn't Bigfoot zapping them with infrasound, it was their own fear colliding with the fight or flight chemicals in the brain. It's time to own those bodily functions. In another case, a lone UFO reportedly flew over a specific location known for Sasquatch sightings in Hayfork, California. This one event doesn't remotely suggest there is a connection between Sasquatches and UFO flyovers, any more than it means there is a connection between the airship that flew over Phoenix and the residents of that city. But I wouldn't try to sell that concept to a UFO Bigfoot connection believer. I've heard it said by a Mr. Tom Durant, who calls himself a paranormal consultant, that following every UFO sighting, there is a slew of Bigfoot sightings. Mr. Durant is apparently ignorant of the facts. Here we go. We're going to start fighting with each other. John Green's database does not reflect or support that statement. My data does not support that statement either. There are other well-known database files, most with no search engine capability, that do not reflect or support the ridiculous statement Durant insists is true, that UFO sightings are followed by a slew of Bigfoot sightings. That is bloody nonsense and angers me when I hear it. In fact, running numbers on John Green's 4,000 index card file, a copy in my possession, indicates the opposite is true. In my own database, there are no credible reports with documentation and photos of a slew of sightings following a given UFO report. Not one. This is blatant paranormal propaganda. It amounts to deliberately falsifying information, and those that continue with that premise are spreading misinformation. The alleged connection with UFOs and Bigfoot does exist in the minds of many men and women. Allow me to cite a well-published example in a letter to the editor of the MUFON Journal, made public in the August 2011 issue. Author, New UFO Bigfoot Connection, Kid on the Block. Dave Plottis offered MUFON this bit of information as evidence for a connection between UFOs and Bigfoot. I make it clear here that I'm not attacking the author, just quoting his work and the words he wrote. Quote, one Bigfoot story coming out of the Hoopa area involved a team of U.S. Forest Service workers who were clearing brush. Hold on a ridgeline outside the small town of Hayfork in far northern California. It was a hot summer night, and dusk had just started to settle over the valley. Members of the team saw a traditional saucer-type craft silently fly up the valley where they were working. The craft slowed and then activated a light and started to scan the mountainside as it slowly moved away from the USFS team. The craft eventually flew out of sight without ever making any sound. Plottis continued, I interviewed the supervisor of this crew of USFS workers, and he signed an affidavit attesting to the facts he reported. NAB's policy requires that any witness claiming a Bigfoot sighting be required to sign a legal affidavit before NABS will investigate the incident. This is standard procedure with every incident and with every witness NABS has investigated. What the supervisor said was particularly remarkable about his crew's UFO sighting is that the mountainside the craft appeared to be scanning was the same area where witnesses had reported a number of Bigfoot sightings to the USFS the previous 4 weeks. I would argue that just because a spacecraft slowed down and activated a searchlight over a ridge previously known for Bigfoot sightings in no way establishes a connection between the aircraft and Bigfoot. If the craft existed, and it was of alien manufacture, It's more likely the craft was looking for a place to put down, or perhaps it was looking for a water source. It could have been a misidentified helicopter flying over that ridge. Forestry Service employees are not infallible. Affidavit or no, delusional people actually believe what they see, and the people they confide in also believe. All you have to do to pass a polygraph is believe a falsehood is true. Whatever it was, why not make a connection between the craft's searchlight and deer, bears, or other creatures that frequent that ridge? Perhaps the craft was searching for one of its own, not a Bigfoot. I see no logic in reasoning that this lone example, provided to and published in the Mouflon Journal 2011 August, suggests in any way a connection between UFOs and Bigfoot, unless, of course, it's needed to support a growing bias. It reminded me of a Tony Robbins quote of sorts. Quote, "As long as you believe something, your brain operates on autopilot, filtering input from the environment to validate your belief regardless of what it is." End quote. You thought we were going to hear about a Tony Robbins quote when talking about these hairy people. All right, goes on with a bit of back and forth about who lies and who doesn't, FBI and shit, blah, blah, blah. Good enough for today. Appreciate Bobbie Short, and I'm not sure, I can't remember if she noted very many of the bright balls of light associated with sightings of these people or not in her investigations. And if she did, maybe she just kind of wrote it off. I don't know. Or maybe I'm just forgetting. But either way, I think we could probably all agree at this stage of the game that the bright lights, the bright balls of light, are a very, very strong common pattern in our faces when it comes to people having these experiences in the middle of frickin' nowhere. Right? We've had multiple sightings of these lights being around these people as they cruise up into the timber, up a slope, or whatever along a highway. What's going on there? What are the lights? What are the lights? They're intelligent. They maneuver with purpose, intent. What are they? You know? What are they? There's so many questions. There's so many questions in life, but it's hard. It's hard to not let yourself just keep on diving into rabbit holes full time, but I've been learning for myself that's not a waste of time, but it's not really, I just don't think it's the right thing to do. You know what I mean? We're only given this one lifetime. You got to bust it up into sections. You got to go do what you love to do. You got to do fun shit. You got to create memories, maintain friendships, do fun shit, be productive, do good things. And it's funny, once we just came back from this last hunt, you know, I went and checked on a handful of the usual suspects that I listen to the odd time when I have time. And one thing that's been standing out to me lately is that a lot of these people, these well-known faces that you listen to online, that have, you know, very popular podcasts with millions of followers each. And I come home from having 2 weeks of absolute awesome, healthy time in the real world with Sarah. She even said, she goes, "I can't believe some of the amazing places you take me and the things we see." And I'm like, right, that's what it's about. And I can't help but think, recently when I just got back and I'm listening to some of these people and looking at the usual faces and their new titles on their latest videos, and I realized, shit, it doesn't matter. You know, these people are making millions of dollars, but they are stuck. They are, from what it appears, all they're doing is going down rabbit holes every single day. Every single day. I'm not seeing any of these people sharing some of the awesome experiences they had as well in life. It's kind of it's just frustrating in a way for me to observe. Do you know what I mean? Like you all know, I'm a one man show here currently. And then, if I did take that leap and went that direction, next thing you know, I got a half a dozen people relying on me, and they're doing this nonstop and digging and doing things for me. And next thing you know, I would possibly become one of those people that this is all I do in life. This is it. Sit here and point out lies and promote truth, which is not a bad thing, but man, I'd miss out on a lot of good stuff too. You know what I mean? You got to do it in healthy proportions, I do believe. I don't envy people that dedicate their entire existence to exposing bullshit and promoting truth. It's a great thing. You can do it. But we really need to enjoy this lifetime at the same time, right? Every single day is gone forever. Yesterday is gone. Whatever you're doing today, if you're wasting it, it's gone forever. You're not going to get it back. You're not going to get it back. I think I'm rambling in a different direction all of a sudden, aren't I? I know it. It's just the way my brain fires sometimes. Anyway. Get me your truth, you guys. Get me your truth. I think Sarah said she has somebody coming on with me today later on at 4 o'clock or something. And apparently, potentially somebody else is coming on here tomorrow as well. And I have a few people I was supposed to get a hold of a while back, and I promise I will. Maybe I'll do that today. I'm somewhat stuck in limbo right now because I really need to get out of here. It's driving me bonkers, that other slice of life. This beautiful, beautiful place that I discovered this last trip. It's a real grunt to get in there. Sweat and just dark tangle the whole way. But I found an absolute monster of a bull elk in there. I found this trail that's unbelievable that cuts through a rock face. About a mile long rock face. I found the one game trail that cuts through it. And holy cow. It's an amazing trail, and I put a trail camera on it. I can't wait to check that sucker and see what's on there. It's going to be an amazing discovery. But anyway, amazing natural discoveries. But anyway, I'm just saying, I'm still in the middle of my other truck issues. I don't want to take this other truck that we bought for Sarah because it's one of those don't scratch it things. I can't stand driving a pickup and worrying about scratching it. It's not me. My pickups they run great. I take care of them, but I treat them like a quad. I bounce them off anything. I don't give a shit. And I like it. I like that. You know? And I don't want to take her new little truck up north again. So anyway, I'm rambling, bambling. Share my story at howtohunt.com. You've got some truth that you need exposed to the world? Send it my way. I'll do it. You got some real dark, nasty shit that needs to be exposed? I'll do that too. And just make sure you keep spreading truth and don't be scared of anybody or anything. All right? Do not be scared of anybody or anything. And make sure you do what you love to do soon. All right? I'll be back later on. Sorry about the babble today, you guys. It is what it is. I've been away from here for a couple weeks. Got to get it out of my system, right? I'll be back tomorrow.